You're probably going to enter 2026 the same way you entered 2025. Not because you lack ambition, not because you're lazy, but because the way most people think about focus is fundamentally backwards. We treat it like a willpower problem, like if we just tried harder, eliminated more distractions, or finally committed to that morning routine, everything would click. But here's what almost no one talks about. Focus doesn't collapse because you're undisciplined. It collapses because of 6 specific, invisible problems that compound throughout your day. Problems that have nothing to do with motivation and everything to do with how your brain actually processes work. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. This isn't about doing more. It's about diagnosing what's quietly breaking your attention and replacing it with something that actually works. The reason most productivity advice fails is because it treats symptoms, not causes. It tells you to block distractions without asking why you're so distractible in the first place. It prescribes time blocking without addressing why your brain resists the blocks. What actually determines your ability to focus isn't how many techniques you know. It's whether you've identified and solved the root problems that make focus impossible. There are 6 of them. 6 patterns that silently drain your cognitive resources before you even sit down to work. Each one has a specific fix. Not a motivation hack, a structural change. Let's go through them. The first problem is decision residue. You sit down to work, but your brain is still processing the 15 micro decisions you made in the last hour. What to wear, what to eat, which email to answer first, whether to take that call. Each decision leaves a small cognitive debt, and by the time you reach your most important task, you're already running on fumes. Research on ego depletion and decision fatigue shows that every choice you make depletes the same mental resource you need for focused work. It's not that you're weak. It's that you've spent your energy before the work even began. The fix is not willpower. It's decision architecture. You need to collapse the number of trivial choices you make before your focus window. Here's how that actually works. The night before, you choose your clothes and leave them on a chair. You eat the same breakfast every weekday. You don't check email or messages until after your first work block. You script your mornings so that by the time you sit down, your decision-making energy is fully reserved for the work that matters. This isn't about being robotic. It's about being strategic. The fewer decisions you make before your peak hours, the more mental capacity you have when it counts. The second problem is task ambiguity. You know what you need to work on, but you don't know where to start. The project is big. The steps aren't clear. So instead of starting, you scroll. You reorganize. You do busy work. This isn't procrastination in the traditional sense. It's cognitive avoidance. Your brain refuses to engage with unclear tasks because ambiguity creates friction, and friction triggers procrastination. Studies on implementation intentions show that vague goals produce hesitation, while specific action triggers produce momentum. The solution is to never sit down to work without a predefined starting action. Not a vague goal like work on the report. A concrete sentence. Open the document and write 3 bullet points summarizing section 2. The next morning, before you finish your workday, you write down the exact first action for tomorrow. Not the project. Not the outcome. The first physical step. When you sit down the next day, there's no ambiguity. No friction. Just execution. This single habit eliminates the cognitive negotiation that kills most focus sessions before they start. The third problem is attention residue. This one is subtle but devastating. You finish a meeting, close the tab, and jump into deep work. Except you don't. Not really. Part of your brain is still in the meeting, still replaying the conversation, still wondering if you said the right thing. Attention residue is the cognitive afterglow of incomplete tasks. Research by Sophie Leroy found that when you switch tasks without closure, fragments of your attention remain stuck on the previous task. The more abrupt the switch, the worse the residue. Your brain isn't designed to hard reset between contexts. It needs a buffer. The habit that fixes this is the 2-minute transition ritual. When you finish a task or meeting, you don't immediately jump to the next thing. You take 2 minutes to close the loop. Write 1 sentence summarizing what happened. Note any open items. Physically stand up and move to a different location, even if it's just across the room. This signals to your brain that the previous task is complete and the next context is beginning. It sounds almost too simple, but the cognitive difference is profound. You enter deep work with a clear mind instead of a fragmented one. The fourth problem is environmental noise. Not the literal kind, though that matters too. This is about the invisible cues in your workspace that constantly pull your attention. The phone within arm's reach. The second monitor with Slack open. The half-finished book on your desk. The mug that reminds you that you need to order more coffee. Every object in your visual field is a micro-interruption. Even if you don't consciously notice it, your brain is processing it. Studies on cognitive load show that visual clutter competes for attentional resources. The more objects in your environment, the more your brain has to work to ignore them. The fix is not aesthetics, it's functional minimalism. Before your focus session, you clear your desk of everything except the single tool you need for the task. Phone goes in a drawer or another room. Extra tabs close. Papers stack out of sight. You're not trying to create a beautiful workspace. You're trying to create a workspace with zero competing signals. One task, one tool, one environment. When your environment has nothing to distract you, your brain stops having to resist distraction. The cognitive load drops. The focus deepens. The fifth problem is reward uncertainty. You sit down to work, but your brain has no clear signal that effort will lead to a payoff. The task feels abstract. The outcome is distant, so your brain defaults to activities with immediate, reliable rewards. Social media, email, news. Anything that delivers a quick hit of completion or novelty. This isn't a character flaw. It's how dopamine systems work. Uncertain rewards produce hesitation. Guaranteed rewards produce action. The research on behavioral momentum shows that the brain prioritizes tasks with clear, immediate feedback loops. To fix this, you need to artificially create reward certainty before your focus session. You set a visible timer for 25 or 50 minutes. You decide in advance that when the timer ends, you get a specific reward. A walk, a coffee, a 5-minute stretch. The reward doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be certain and immediate. Your brain now has a clear contract. Focus for this defined period, and you get this guaranteed outcome. The uncertainty disappears. The resistance drops. You're no longer negotiating with yourself about whether the work is worth it. The system has already decided. The sixth problem is recovery debt. You think you can just keep working, keep pushing, and eventually you'll catch up. But focus isn't a resource you can borrow against. It's a resource that depletes and must be restored. When you skip recovery, you don't just feel tired. You accumulate a cognitive debt that makes every subsequent focus session harder. Studies on ultradian rhythms show that the brain naturally moves through 90 to 120-minute cycles of high and low alertness. When you push past those cycles without rest, performance degrades exponentially. The fix is scheduled recovery, not aspirational recovery. You don't wait until you feel tired. You build rest into the structure of your day. After every 90-minute work block, you take a true break. Not scrolling, not email. You stand up, move, look at something distant, drink water. For 10 or 15 minutes, you do nothing cognitively demanding. This isn't optional. It's part of the system. The break is what allows the next focus session to exist. Without it, you're not working longer. You're working worse. These 6 problems are not mysterious. They're not personality dependent. They're structural. And the habits that solve them are not aspirational. They're mechanical. You don't need to become a different person. You just need to stop letting invisible problems sabotage your focus before it begins. This is what separates people who consistently do deep work from people who constantly struggle with it. Not talent. Not discipline. System design. If you want 2026 to feel different, don't set bigger goals. Fix the hidden breaks in your focus architecture. The rest will follow.